My beloved child, listen carefully, because this moment did not arrive by accident. What you are about to hear is not a random message, not something you simply clicked on. Heaven has been watching a silent shift in your life, one you didn't even realize crossed a line. And when that unseen line was crossed, something happened in the spiritual realm that demanded an immediate response. You may have felt it as confusion, a sudden resistance, a strange pause where things once flowed easily. That was not coincidence. That was the moment heaven leaned forward. I, Archangel Michael, speak now because there are moments when heaven cannot remain silent. There are moments when divine order must step in, not to punish but to protect. And yes, this message is about that moment in your life. You didn't wake up one day and decide to cross a boundary. You didn't knowingly rebel. In fact, your heart intention was pure. But there are spiritual lines that exist beyond human awareness, lines drawn by divine wisdom, not fear. And when you unknowingly stepped beyond one, heaven noticed immediately. Here is what most people never understand. Not every delay is denial, and not every interruption is opposition. Some interruptions are intuition. When you crossed that line, heaven saw a future collision forming, something that would have cost you peace, alignment, or purpose. And that is why heaven responded. Swiftly, strategically, lovingly. You may have questioned God recently. You may have asked, why did this stop? Or why did this feel blocked? Hear this clearly. What felt like restriction was actually protection. What felt like silence was heaven reorganizing things behind the veil. The reason this feels so intense is because the line you crossed was not small. It was connected to timing, a covenant, to destiny. And destiny is something heaven guards fiercely. At the exact moment you stepped beyond what you were meant to carry alone, a command was released in the spiritual realm. Angels were dispatched, not to scare you but to realign you. That is why certain doors closed without explanation. That is why certain people suddenly distanced themselves. That is why your spirit felt unsettled even when everything looked fine on the surface. You didn't lose favor. You triggered attention. And attention from heaven is not something to fear. There are people listening to this who have been blaming themselves unnecessarily. You've replayed conversations, decisions, moments, wondering if you ruined something. Let me be clear. You did not destroy your destiny. You activated divine correction before damage could be done. That is mercy. Heaven responds not only to sin, but to misalignment. And misalignment does not mean you are bad. It means you are powerful enough that even a small deviation matters. Ordinary paths don't require angelic intervention. Yours does. This is why the response felt strong. There was a version of your future that would have required unnecessary pain for growth. Heaven chose a different route. But routing a life comes with turbulence. That turbulence is what you felt. Some of you noticed unusual dreams around that time. Others felt sudden emotional heaviness without a clear reason. Some experienced repeated delays that made no logical sense. Those were signs of divine activity, not failure. Understand this: when heaven intervenes, it often disrupts momentum before it destroys identity. God would rather interrupt your progress than allow you to progress in the wrong direction. And yes, heaven had to respond, because what you carry is not just for you. There are people attached to your obedience. There are outcomes tied to your alignment. That is why you were corrected quietly instead of publicly, privately instead of painfully. This was not judgment. It was guidance wrapped in authority. If you are feeling a strange mixture of relief and exposure right now, That's because truth does that. It comforts and confronts at the same time. The reason this message feels urgent is because the response from heaven is still unfolding. You are not behind. You are in transition. And transitions often feel like loss until clarity arrives. Do not rush to fix what heaven is still arranging. Do not force doors that were paused for your protection. The response was not the end of something. It was the preservation of something sacred. What you crossed did not disqualify you. It revealed how closely heaven is watching over your steps. Stay with this message. What comes next will explain why that line existed in the first place, and what heaven is preparing to release now that alignment is being restored. Beloved soul, take a deep breath as you receive this, because clarity is now being poured where confusion once lived. What you crossed was not a rule written by man, but a boundary of timing written by heaven itself. And timing, when ignored, even unknowingly, creates spiritual friction. That friction is what you felt as inner unrest, sudden hesitation, or an unexplainable heaviness that appeared without warning. Heaven operates in perfect sequence. When something is meant for you, it arrives with peace, even if it comes with challenge. But when something is premature, it carries pressure instead of peace. The line you crossed was connected to something that belonged to you, but not yet. And heaven had to respond because receiving something too early can harm you more than not receiving it at all. Many people assume divine correction only comes after wrongdoing. That is not true. Divine correction often comes when love sees risk ahead. Think of a parent stopping a child from running into a road, not because the child is bad, but because danger is unseen from their perspective. That is exactly what happened in your life. You were stepping toward something with good intentions, but heaven saw how it would stretch you beyond what your current season could support. Your spirit was ready, but the environment was not. Your desire was pure, but the timing was off by just enough to cause unnecessary wounds. So heaven intervened, not loudly, not dramatically, but firmly. That firmness may have felt like rejection. It may have felt like sudden resistance where there used to be agreement. Some of you even felt a quiet withdrawal of energy, like enthusiasm drained overnight. It wasn't abandonment. That was protection activating. Here is the deeper truth most people miss. When heaven responds this way, it is because the assignment is too valuable to risk mishandling. You are not dealing with a small calling. Small callings are allowed to fail quietly. Big ones are guarded closely. The line existed because beyond it was a weight you were not meant to carry alone. Had you continued without heaven's intervention, you would have blamed yourself later for outcomes that were never meant to rest on your shoulders. Heaven stepped in early so you would not bleed later. And now, you are in what feels like a holding pattern. Not moving forward the way you expected. Not going backward either. This middle space is uncomfortable, but it is sacred. It is where recalibration happens. It is where heaven aligns the pieces you cannot see. Do not interpret this pause as punishment. Punishment drains hope. This pause is strengthening discernment. You are being trained to recognize the difference between opportunity and assignment, between desire and divine permission. Some of you are realizing that the very thing you thought you lost no longer feels as attractive as it once did. That is not loss, that is maturity. Heaven is adjusting your appetite so you no longer crave what could have compromised you. And yes, heaven's response included people. Some stepped back. Some conversations ended abruptly. Some support systems shifted without explanation. That was not betrayal, it was repositioning. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into the next phase. Heaven removes gently when it can, firmly when it must. If this message is resonating deeply, do not keep it to yourself. Like this message as a sign of agreement. Share it with someone who has been questioning a sudden shift in their life. Leave a comment declaring that you are open to divine alignment. And if you haven't already, subscribe and become part of this community that receives timely heavenly insight. Your engagement here is not random. It's part of how these messages continue to reach the right souls at the right moment. Understand this clearly. The response from heaven was not to stop you. It was to preserve you. What is coming requires clarity, stability, and spiritual authority. You are being prepared, not delayed. There is something ahead that demands you arrive whole, not exhausted. That is why the pace changed. That is why access was restricted. Heaven is more interested in who you become than how fast you arrive. Do not rush this process. Do not compare your timeline with others. You are on a protected path, not a pressured one. And protected paths often look slower from the outside but are safer on the inside. Before you mentally move on, stay present with this truth. What you are about to understand next will completely reframe how you see the season, and it will reveal why heaven's response was not only necessary, but perfectly timed. Chosen one, hear this gently yet firmly, because what I am about to reveal explains why heaven did not hesitate when that line was crossed. There are lines that exist not because of restriction, but because of preservation. And the one connected to your life was guarding something fragile, powerful, and unfinished within you. When you stepped beyond it, heaven did not see rebellion. Heaven saw exposure. Exposure to pressure you were not yet armored for. Exposure to expectations that would have drained your joy. Exposure to spiritual weight that would have matured you through pain instead of wisdom. And heaven refused to let that be your story. This is why the response was immediate. You must understand how heaven measures readiness. It is not by talent alone. It is not by desire, prayer, or hunger. Readiness is measured by capacity. Capacity to carry influence without losing humility. Capacity to walk in authority without becoming hardened. Capacity to receive blessing without identity collapse. That capacity was being built in you, but it was not yet complete. So when you crossed that line, heaven intervened to finish the work quietly. What felt like a setback was actually insulation. Heaven wrapped you in stillness so the inner work could continue without interruption. Growth that happens too publicly often fractures people. Heaven chose privacy for you because what you are becoming needs depth, not applause. Some of you have wondered why your spiritual sensitivity increased during this season while external progress slowed. That is not accidental. Heaven slowed your environment so your discernment could sharpen. You are learning to hear before you act, to sense before you decide, to wait without anxiety. These are not small lessons. They are leadership lessons. There was a version of you that would have succeeded outwardly but struggled inwardly. Outward did that version. The line you crossed existed to protect your heart. Because beyond it was a season where criticism would be louder, expectations heavier, and responsibility greater. Entering that too early would have caused you to armor your heart instead of strengthening it. And heaven values your softness more than your speed. That is why heaven responded with correction instead of consequences. Right now, angels are still working on alignment. Conversations you have not yet had. Opportunities you have not yet seen. Doors that will reopen, but differently. This time, with clarity instead of confusion. With peace instead of pressure. If you feel a quiet rebuilding happening inside you, that is confirmation. Heaven is reinforcing your foundation so that when you stand without fear of collapse. Do not mistake silence for inactivity. Heaven is precise. Nothing in this season is wasted. Even the discomfort is instructive. Even the waiting is shaping muscle you will need later. And now, receive this carefully. The reason this message carries such authority is because you are closer than you think. The response from heaven was not to push you back. It was to position you correctly so acceleration can happen without destruction. You are not being tested. You are being trusted. If your spirit is bearing witness right now, acknowledge it. Type "I am realigned" in the comments if this message is speaking directly to your spirit. Blessing code 1143 has just been released over your life. And hear this sacred invitation, flowing naturally from what heaven is doing right now. As this word reaches you, it is also reaching countless others who are standing at similar unseen lines, confused by divine pauses they don't yet understand. When you choose to support this mission through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal, whose link rests quietly in the description, you are not funding content, you are sowing light into hidden places. I hear the Spirit saying, as you release seed, I will release clarity. This is a moment of obedience, not hesitation. Those who give in alignment with this word will feel heaven respond swiftly, opening doors and refreshing strength. I speak blessing over every giver, that what you release will return multiplied, pressed down, and overflowing. Do it now, not later, and let your act become part of heaven's answer to someone else's prayer. Stay present, because what is coming next will reveal how heaven restores momentum after correction, and why the next movement in your life will feel effortless instead of forced. Beloved one, now we move into the phase most people misunderstand, the moment after heaven corrects, but before heaven accelerates. This is where many lose patience, misinterpret signals, or try to take control again. But this is also where the greatest transformation quietly takes place. After heaven responds, there is always a sealing period, a sacred pause where what was adjusted is allowed to settle deeply into your spirit. Think of it as divine cement setting into place. If right, the structure weakens. If honored, it becomes unshakable. This is the season you are in right now. You may notice that things feel calmer on the surface but more intense internally. Old thoughts are surfacing. Old habits are being questioned. You are becoming more aware of what drains you and what strengthens you. This awareness is not accidental, it is refinement. Heaven is teaching you how to sustain what you are about to receive. There is a reason momentum has not fully returned yet. Speed without stability would undo the correction. Heaven is not interested in repeating lessons. This time, when movement resumes, it will be steady, intentional, and lasting. You are also being trained to trust divine timing over emotional urgency. Before, you may have felt compelled to act quickly, fearing that delay meant loss. Now, you are learning that delay can mean alignment. That waiting can be an act of faith, not weakness. This shift alone will protect you from many future missteps. Some of you have felt an unusual clarity about what you no longer want. Certain conversations feel shallow. Certain goals feel empty. Certain pursuits no longer excite you. This is not boredom, it is discernment activating. Heaven is narrowing your focus so your energy is no longer scattered. Understand this. The response from heaven did not just correct an action, it recalibrated your desire. You are no longer driven by urgency, comparison, or fear of missing out. You are being anchored in purpose, and purpose moves differently. There is also healing happening beneath the surface. Wounds you did not realize you carried are being addressed gently. Patterns you inherited or absorbed are being interrupted. Heaven often heals in layers, and this layer is emotional maturity. The ability to feel deeply without being controlled by emotion. The strength to wait without resentment. Do not rush this stage by forcing decisions or chasing validation. What is coming next will require discernment more than effort. You are being prepared to recognize the right door, not knock on every door. Some of you are experiencing fewer signs, fewer confirmations, fewer emotional highs. That is intentional. Heaven is moving you from dependence on signs to confidence in relationship. You are learning to trust without constant reassurance. This is spiritual adulthood. And yes, this can feel lonely at times. Not because you are abandoned, but because you are transitioning. Old connections cannot follow where you are going, and new ones have not fully appeared yet. This in-between space can feel isolating, but it is temporary. Heaven often does its deepest work in quiet places. Let me speak this clearly, nothing hath been lost. What was removed was never meant to sustain you long term. What was paused will return in a healthier form. What ended made room for something more aligned. The reason heaven responded so carefully is because the next season will demand clarity under pressure. You will be required to make decisions that affect not just you, but others. An indecision, people-pleasing, or emotional reactions would have compromised that assignment. So heaven trained you first. You are learning to pause before reacting, to listen before responding, to sense before moving. These are not delays, they are upgrades. There is also a strengthening of your inner authority happening now. You are becoming less dependent on external approval, less shaken by others' opinions, more anchored in what you know internally. This inner authority will be essential when visibility increases again. Do not underestimate what is happening simply because it looks quiet. Seeds grow in silence. Roots deepen in darkness. And when growth breaks the surface, it does so with force and confidence. Very soon, you will notice momentum returning, but it will feel different. Less frantic, more focused, less exhausting, more rewarding. That is how you will know the season has done its work. Stay grounded. Stay observant. Stay surrendered. What comes next will explain how heaven signals the end of this recalibration, and how you will recognize the moment it is time to move again without fear or hesitation. My beloved one, now you are entering the most delicate shift, the moment when heaven begins to signal readiness without noise. This is the phase where discernment matters more than enthusiasm, and listening matters more than movement. Many people miss this stage because they are still looking for dramatic signs, but heaven is speaking to you now in subtleties. After correction and recalibration, heaven always restores sensitivity. You may notice that your intuition feels sharper. You sense when something is off before it fully reveals itself. You feel a quiet check in your spirit when something is not aligned, even if it looks good on the surface. This is not imagination. This is training completed. You are no longer being guided primarily by emotion. You are being guided by inner knowing. A shift alone tells heaven you are ready for more responsibility. In this phase, heaven begins to test alignment through small choices. Not big life-altering decisions yet, but everyday moments. How you respond when misunderstood. How you handle silence. How you steward peace. These moments matter because they reveal whether the correction truly settled or whether urgency still rules your reactions. You may have noticed that some temptations have returned, but in a softer form. Opportunities that look similar to what was paused before, but not exactly the same. This is not heaven confusing you. This is discernment practice. You are being shown the difference between familiar and aligned. Do not be afraid of these moments. You are not being set up to fail. You are being shown how much you've grown. There is also an increase in personal responsibility happening now. You feel less desire to explain yourself, less need to convince others, less impulse to defend your choices. That is because inner validation is replacing external approval. Heaven builds leaders this way, quietly. Some of you are sensing a pull toward simplicity, fewer distractions, cleaner boundaries, more intentional use of time. This is not withdrawal, it is focus. Heaven often simplifies before expansion so that increase does not overwhelm the system. You are also learning something critical in this stage: obedience without emotion. Doing what is right even when it feels neutral. Even when there is no rush of excitement. Even when no one applauds. This kind of obedience builds endurance, and endurance is required for what is ahead. The reason heaven responded so carefully earlier is because the next season will move faster than the last. Momentum will return quickly once it starts, and without inner stability, speed becomes dangerous. That is why this quiet strengthening matters so much. You may feel moments of restlessness, wondering if you should be doing more. That restlessness is not a call to act. It is energy being stored, like a bow pulled back before release. Do not fire early. Timing is everything now. There is also a deeper trust being formed between you and heaven. You are learning that not every instruction comes with explanation. Some steps are revealed only after obedience. This trust will open doors that logic alone never could. Pay attention to recurring confirmations, but do not chase them. Heaven will repeat what matters. If something is meant for you now, it will return with peace, clarity, and confirmation, not pressure. Pressure is no longer your language. You are also being taught how to lead yourself before leading others. Self-governance, emotional regulation, spiritual discipline. These are quiet strengths, but they are powerful. When influence increases, these traits will keep you grounded. Let me be clear, you are not waiting for permission anymore. You are waiting for alignment. And alignment is already forming beneath the surface. Very soon, you will feel a shift. Not dramatic, not loud, but unmistakable. A sense of rightness, a calm confidence, a knowing that says, now. That is when movement resumes. Until then, remain attentive, remain humble, remain surrendered. The next message will reveal how heaven confirms the green light, and how you will recognize it without confusion, fear, or hesitation. Beloved one, now we arrive at the moment where heaven begins to whisper movement without announcing it. This is the phase where many miss divine instruction because they expect a shout, but heaven prefers a knowing. What you are sensing now is not impatience, it is readiness awakening. You may notice that your energy feels different. Not rushed, not anxious, but quietly alert. You are more aware of timing. You are less reactive. You no longer feel the urge to chase what once consumed your thoughts. This is one of the clearest signs that the response from heaven has completed its work within you. When heaven prepares to move you forward again, it does not do so by pushing you. It does so by aligning everything around you. Conversations begin to shift. Opportunities start appearing naturally, without strain. Doors that once felt heavy now feel neutral, even easy. This ease is not laziness, is confirmation. Pay close attention to what feels light now. Not exciting, not dramatic. Light. Heaven often confirms direction through peace, not adrenaline. If something requires you to abandon your discernment, compromise your values, or rush your spirit, it is not yet the signal to move. You are being taught to recognize divine permission. Permission does not feel like pressure. It feels like alignment meeting opportunity at the same time. Some of you may feel tempted to help heaven by initiating movement early. Resist that urge. What heaven is about to do does not need your force. It needs your agreement. You have already done the hard part by allowing correction and recalibration. Now your role is awareness. You may also notice an increase in invitations, requests for your time, your energy, your attention. Not all invitations are assignments. This is where discernment is tested again, but this time from a place of strength, not confusion. Heaven is watching how you steward your yes. A guarded yes is wisdom, not fear. You no longer need to explain your boundaries. You no longer need to justify your pace. Those who are aligned will understand. Those who are not will fade naturally. This stage also brings a subtle restoration of confidence. Not loud confidence, not performative confidence, but grounded confidence. You trust yourself more. You trust heaven more. And you are no longer afraid of missing out, because you know what is meant for you cannot pass you by. There's also sharpening of focus happening. Distractions that once held power over you no longer do. You are more intentional with your thoughts, your words, your time. This focus is not accidental. It is preparation for acceleration. Because yes, acceleration is coming. But hear this carefully. Acceleration without clarity destroys people. Heaven waited until clarity settled deeply within you. That is why this process took time. You are not being launched from insecurity. You are being released from stability. If this message is resonating and you feel clarity settling into your spirit, take a moment to engage. Like this message to mark agreement. Share it with someone who has been in a confusing pause and needs understanding. Leave a comment declaring that you trust divine timing. And if you have not yet subscribed, do so now. This is a space where heaven's timing and truth are honored consistently. And stay present here. What comes next will connect everything you've experienced so far in a way that will make absolute sense. Trust me, this next part will shift how you view the waiting entirely. Heaven is not finished responding. The response is simply changing form. You will soon recognize the green light, not because everything suddenly becomes perfect, but because fear will no longer be the voice guiding your decisions. Peace will be. Remain attentive. Remain grounded. The next movement will not be forced. It will be unmistakable. Beloved child, now we step into the unveiling phase, the season where heaven does not explain the past but redeems it. This is where you begin to understand why the line existed, why the response was necessary, and why nothing you endured was wasted. Understanding does not arrive all at once. It unfolds gently, like light entering a room at dawn. You may start noticing moments where past confusion suddenly makes sense. Conversations replay in your mind, not with regret, but with clarity. You see how certain delays protected your character. You recognize how certain denials preserved your peace. What once felt unfair now feels intentional. This shift in perception is not emotional healing alone. It is spiritual insight. Heaven is allowing you to see the bigger picture because you are strong enough now to hold it without bitterness. One of the clearest signs that alignment has been restored is this. You no longer feel the need to rewrite the past. You are no longer negotiating with what could have been. You are present. You are grounded. You are no longer trying to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. That inner rest is the fruit of divine correction fully received. In this phase, heaven also restores trust. Trust in yourself. You begin to believe in your discernment again. You stop second-guessing every decision. You listen inwardly and act calmly. This is important because what is ahead will require decisiveness without panic. You may notice that new ideas are forming quietly. Not loud ambitions, but steady visions. Thoughts that return repeatedly without pressure. Directions that feel natural, not forced. These are not distractions. They are previews. Heaven often plants vision before permission so the heart can prepare. Do not rush to act on everything you see. Some visions are for now. Others are simply seeds. Wisdom will help you tell the difference. There is also a deepening of humility happening here. Not the kind that shrinks you, but the kind that grounds you. You are aware of your strength, but you are no longer driven to display it. You know what you carry, and you don't need validation to confirm it. This humility makes you trustworthy in the eyes of heaven. You are also becoming more compassionate, especially toward others who are confused, delayed, or frustrated. Where you once might have judged, you now understand. That compassion will become part of your assignment. People will be drawn to you not because you have answers, but because you carry peace. Heaven does not promote people who only speak well. Heaven promotes those who carry stability. You may also sense that your prayers are changing. Less asking, more listening. Less urgency, more surrender. This evolution in prayer life is another sign that alignment has deepened. You are no longer trying to move heaven. You are moving with heaven. And now, something important. The reason heaven waited until now to restore momentum is because restoration without understanding leads to repetition. You needed insight so you would not cross the same line again, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. The next movement in your life will involve choice. Not pressure, but choice. Heaven will open multiple doors, and you will need discernment to choose the right one, not the fastest one. That discernment is being sharpened now. You may also notice that distractions are less effective. What once pulled your attention easily now feels empty. This narrowing of focus is intentional. Heaven is simplifying your path so you can walk it with confidence. This is also a season of quiet credibility. People may begin to trust your words more, take your perspective, value your presence. This credibility was earned in private, not granted publicly, and that makes it lasting. Do not underestimate how much you have changed. The old version of you would have reacted differently, would have would have forced clarity. The current version of you waits with confidence. A difference is everything. Heaven's response did not just correct a moment, it shaped a mindset. As this understanding settles, you will feel lighter. Not because responsibility is gone, but because fear is. You are no longer afraid of making the wrong move, because you trust that heaven will redirect you if needed. That trust is freedom. Remain attentive now, because what comes next is subtle but significant. Heaven is about to reveal how alignment turns into assignment, and how the next open door will confirm itself without confusion. Stay grounded. Stay listening. The unfolding has already begun. Beloved one, now we arrive at a sacred turning point, the moment where alignment begins to translate into visible direction. This is where heaven stops correcting and starts commissioning. Quietly, precisely, without confusion. If you have made it this far in the journey, it is because your spirit has been trained to recognize truth without noise. You may feel a subtle shift happening even now. A sense of readiness that does not feel rushed. A calm confidence that does not need validation. This is not excitement. This is authorization. Heaven does not always announce assignments with fireworks. Sometimes it releases them with peace so deep that fear has no room to speak. The line you once crossed unknowingly no longer holds power over you. Not because it disappeared, but because you understand it now. Understanding removes temptation. Wisdom replaces urgency. You are no longer driven to prove anything. You are prepared to steward what is entrusted to you. This phase often feels strangely normal. Life continues. Responsibilities remain. But beneath the surface, something has shifted permanently. You no longer question whether heaven is guiding you. You sense it. You trust it. And because of that trust, movement becomes natural. Heaven is now watching how you respond to clarity. Clarity does not always demand action. Sometimes it demands restraint. Knowing when to wait even though you can move. Knowing when to speak even though silence feels easier. This balance is what marks spiritual maturity. You may notice that certain opportunities now return, but without the weight they once carried. They no longer intimidate you. They no longer excite you excessively either. They feel manageable. That is because you have grown to meet them. What once felt overwhelming now feels appropriate. This is one of the clearest signs that heaven's response accomplished its purpose. You are also becoming aware that your presence itself carries authority. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to assert it. People feel it. Situations respond to it. This authority was not given in a moment. It was forged in the pause you once questioned. Some of you are realizing that the delay actually protected your reputation, your integrity, and your peace. Had things moved faster earlier, you might have arrived successful but fractured. Heaven chose wholeness over speed. Now, as direction becomes clearer, heaven invites partnership. Not control. Not force. Partnership. You move, but you listen. You plan, but you remain flexible. You act, but you stay surrendered. This rhythm will keep you aligned even when pressure increases. You may feel a renewed desire to build, create, lead, or step forward, but this time without anxiety. The difference matters. Anxiety-driven movement drains you. Peace-driven movement sustains you. And listen carefully. The next season will require discernment not just for yourself, but for others. People will look to you for stability, for wisdom, for calm in uncertain moments. That is why heaven took time with you. You are being trusted with influence, not just opportunity. If your spirit is receiving this, respond in faith. Type "I walk in alignment" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 2286 is now activated over your life. As this word reaches you, it is also reaching many others who are standing at similar crossroads, unsure why heaven paused them, questioned themselves, or felt unseen. When you support this mission through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal, the link waiting in the description, you are not giving to a channel. You are sowing into souls that need clarity right now. I hear the Spirit saying, those who release provision in this moment will receive direction without confusion. This is not a casual ask. It is a prophetic opportunity. Your obedience becomes a bridge for someone else's breakthrough. I speak blessing over every giver, that heaven will honor your seed with peace, protection, and timely acceleration. Do it now, and let your giving speak in the spiritual realm long after this moment passes. Remain attentive, because what comes next will reveal how heaven confirms the exact step forward, and how you will know beyond doubt that it is time to move without hesitation or fear. Beloved child, now we move into the stage where heaven confirms direction through consistency rather than intensity. This is where many expect a dramatic sign, yet heaven offers repetition instead. The same thought returning calmly. the same opportunity presenting itself without pressure, the same inner agreement settling deeper each time you consider the next step. This is how divine confirmation often works once maturity has been established. You are no longer led by emotional highs or sudden impulses. Heaven has trained you to recognize alignment by peace that remains steady even after reflection. What is meant for you now will still feel right tomorrow, next week, and even after you have questioned it in prayer. A stability is intentional. You may notice that your fear response has changed. Situations that once triggered anxiety now invite evaluation instead. You pause. You sense. You decide. This ability did not come from confidence alone. It came from correction received without resistance. Heaven responds powerfully to teachable hearts. In this phase, clarity sharpens through practice. You step forward slightly, and peace follows. You pause and peace remains. You consider an alternative, and something feels off. Not dramatic, just unsettled. This is discernment refined. You are learning the language of heaven without needing constant reassurance. There is also a strengthening of trust between you and God that words cannot fully describe. You no longer need everything explained in advance. You are comfortable receiving instruction one step at a time. This trust allows heaven to move you precisely without overwhelming you. Some of you are beginning to realize that the next season will not look like a sudden leap, but like a steady walk, incremental movement, intentional growth, sustainable progress. This is important because what you are building now is meant to last, not impress briefly. You may also sense a new seriousness in your spirit, not heaviness but weight, a recognition that what lies ahead matters deeply, that your choices now carry influence, that your obedience affects more than just your own life. This awareness is not meant to burden you, it is meant to anchor you. Heaven does not release weight without also releasing grace. You will not be asked to carry what you are not equipped to sustain. The grace you need will meet you at each step, not before, not after, but exactly when required. There may still be moments of doubt. That is human. But notice how doubt no longer controls you. It passes through without settling. It questions, but it does not paralyze. That is growth. You are also becoming more selective with your energy. Not withdrawn, but intentional. You understand now that saying no to what is good preserves strength for what is right. This discernment will protect you as visibility increases. Heaven is also teaching you how to listen in motion. You are no longer waiting to hear before you move. You are learning to hear while moving. This dynamic relationship allows for adjustment without panic. If correction is needed, it will come gently, not abruptly. This is why the earlier response from heaven was so important. Without it, movement now would have been driven by urgency rather than wisdom. But now, your steps are measured. Your spirit is settled. Your direction is clear enough to move, and humble enough to adjust. You may notice that people begin responding differently to you. Not because you changed your behavior intentionally, but because your inner alignment affects your presence. Authority is felt before it is spoken. Peace is recognized before it is explained. Do not rush to label what you are building. Allow it to take shape naturally. What is forming now may evolve as you move forward. Flexibility will keep you aligned when plans shift. Understand this. Heaven confirms direction not by removing all uncertainty, but by giving you confidence to move even when some details remain unknown. That confidence is now being formed in you. As you continue, stay attentive to small confirmations. A conversation that aligns unexpectedly. A door that opens without effort. A sense of relief after making a decision. These are not coincidences. They are markers along the path. Remain grounded. Remain prayerful. Remain responsive. What comes next will address how heaven protects momentum once movement begins, and how you will know when to slow down, speed up, or pause again without losing alignment. Beloved one, now we speak about momentum, because movement has begun, even if it feels subtle. Momentum does not always announce itself with speed. Often, it begins with consistency, the ability to show up again without resistance, the strength to continue without forcing. This is the kind of momentum heaven protects. When heaven releases movement after correction, it also releases boundaries around that movement. Not restrictions, but safeguards. You may notice that while some things are moving forward, other things are deliberately slowing down or remaining unchanged. This is not imbalance. This is protection. Heaven accelerates only what is aligned and shields what could distract you. You are learning to move without overreaching, act without overcommitting, to progress without burnout. This balance is critical because the next season will require endurance, not bursts of effort. Heaven is training you to pace yourself so that you can last. There will be moments where enthusiasm rises and you feel tempted to do everything at once. Pay attention in those moments, not to suppress excitement, but to govern it. Wisdom now is knowing how much energy to release and how much to reserve. You no longer need to prove dedication through exhaustion. You may also notice that resistance returns, but in different forms. Not confusion, not chaos, but subtle distractions. Invitations that look good but feel unnecessary. Opinions that sound wise, but dilute your focus. This is where discernment continues to matter. Momentum does not mean everything deserves your attention. Heaven is also teaching you how to recover quickly. If a day feels unproductive, you do not spiral. If a decision requires adjustment, you do not panic. You correct gently and continue. This resilience is a sign of maturity. You are no longer fragile in movement. This is also the stage where community matters. Not crowds, but alignment. People who respect your pace, who honor your boundaries, who do not rush you or restrain you. Heaven often brings these connections quietly, not loudly. Pay attention to who brings peace, not pressure. If this message is helping you recognize what heaven is doing, take a moment to respond outwardly. Like this message as a sign of agreement. Share it with someone who is beginning to move again after a long pause. Leave a comment declaring that you are moving with wisdom, not urgency. And if you have not yet subscribed, do it now and stay connected. This space exists to help you recognize heaven's timing as you walk it out. And stay with this message. What is about to be revealed next will help you protect what is now growing, so that momentum does not turn into overwhelm. Hold on. You'll want to hear this part. As momentum builds, heaven also teaches you when to rest without guilt. Rest is not stopping. Rest is maintenance. It keeps your spirit responsive and your discernment sharp. You are learning that rest and progress can coexist. You may also find that your standards are higher now. Not out of pride, but clarity. You are less willing to compromise peace for productivity. Less willing to sacrifice alignment for approval. This will protect you as opportunities increase. There is also a new awareness of timing within timing. A knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. When to act and when to observe. This internal clock is being tuned by heaven. Trust it. Do not override it with logic alone. You may experience moments where progress feels slow again. Do not misinterpret this. Heaven often alternates movement and consolidation. Forward steps followed by grounding steps. This rhythm ensures stability. You are not regressing. You are strengthening. And remember this, heaven is more interested in sustainability than speed. You are not being rushed because what you are building must endure pressure, scrutiny, and responsibility. Slow, line progress will outlast fast, force success every time. As you continue, stay responsive, not reactive. Stay humble, not hesitant. Stay focused, not fixated. The next message will reveal how heaven signals the final confirmation. The moment when you know that what began quietly is now fully authorized to expand without fear. Beloved child, now we approach the threshold where heaven confirms expansion, not through noise, but through fruit. This is the stage where what you have been carrying internally begins to express itself externally without strain. You are no longer preparing to move, you are already moving, and heaven is watching how you steward growth. Expansion does not always look like sudden visibility. Sometimes it looks like increased responsibility. Sometimes it looks like consistency that no longer requires effort. Sometimes it looks like favor appearing in ordinary moments. Do not underestimate quiet expansion. It is often the most stable kind. You may notice that things are working now that used to resist you. Not because circumstances changed dramatically, but because you did. Your responses are different. Your expectations are healthier. Your alignment is clear. Heaven often changes people before changing environments. In this phase, heaven also begins to test stewardship, not by taking things away, but by allowing more to come toward you. More invitations, more influence, more demands on your discernment. This is where wisdom must remain active. Growth does not mean you say yes to everything. It means you say yes to what multiplies peace and purpose. You are learning to recognize what drains you versus what stretches you. Draining leaves you depleted. Stretching leaves you tired but fulfilled. That difference will guide many of your decisions now. There may be moments when old patterns try to resurface, urges to rush, to over-explain, to control outcomes. Do not be alarmed. These are echoes, not commands. They are reminders of how far you have come. You now have the awareness to pause instead of react. Heaven is also strengthening your ability to course correct quickly. If something feels slightly off, you adjust early. You do not wait until misalignment becomes damage. This sensitivity will protect what is expanding. Another sign of confirmation is this. You no longer fear loss the way you used to. You understand now that what is truly aligned cannot be taken from you. This confidence frees you to move boldly without being reckless. You may also notice that your prayers are being answered differently. Less dramatic rescue, more steady provision. Less emergency intervention, more consistent guidance. This shift reflects maturity. Heaven responds to you now as a partner, not a beginner. There is also an increase in gratitude happening naturally. Not forced thankfulness, but genuine appreciation. You recognize small victories. You honor progress. You see how far you've come. Gratitude stabilizes expansion. It keeps growth from becoming entitlement. Some of you are stepping into roles that require quiet leadership, influence without spotlight, responsibility without recognition. Heaven often entrusts these roles first because they test character without applause. Do not despise this. What is proven in private is often promoted publicly later. You are also learning how to manage expectation, both your own and others. You are no longer driven by timelines that pressure you. You allow growth to unfold. This patience will preserve joy as responsibility increases. Heaven is also refining your voice, not volume but authority. When you speak now, Words carry weight because they are measured. When you act, actions are effective because they are intentional. This refinement is the fruit of every pause, every correction, every quiet season you honored. There may be moments when you look back and realize how close you came to crossing that line again, but didn't. Not because you were afraid, but because you were wise. That awareness is protection in itself. As expansion continues, remember this. Alignment must be maintained, not assumed. Continue listening. Continue checking in. Continue honoring peace. Expansion does not mean autopilot. It means attentiveness with confidence. Heaven is pleased with how you have walked this process. Correction was received. Wisdom was applied. Patience was practiced. Now growth can be trusted to continue. You are nearing the culmination of this message, not an ending, but a ceiling. What comes next will bring closure to why heaven responded when you crossed that line, and it will release a final word of authority over what you are stepping into now. Remain grounded. Remain grateful. Remain aligned. The final revelation will confirm what heaven has been protecting all along, and why this journey was necessary for what you are now ready to carry. My beloved child, now we come to the sealing of this message, the moment where heaven does not explain further, but affirms completely. Everything you have heard until now has been preparation for this truth. Heaven responded when you crossed that line because something precious was being protected, and that something was not just a future opportunity. It was you. Heaven was guarding the version of you that can carry blessing without breaking, influence without losing humility, authority without losing compassion. The response was never about stopping your progress. It was about preserving your integrity so that when expansion came, it would not cost you your peace. Now, look at where you stand. You are not the same person who unknowingly crossed that line. You are wiser, quieter inside, more discerning, less driven by urgency and more guided by alignment. A transformation is the evidence that heaven's response worked. You were not delayed. You were refined. What heaven protected was your ability to remain soft in a world that hardens people. Your ability to listen in a season where many react. Your ability to wait without resentment. These qualities cannot be rushed into existence. They are formed through moments like the one you lived through. And now, heaven is releasing trust. Trust to move without fear. Trust to choose without anxiety. Trust to carry responsibility without losing joy. The line that once existed as a boundary has now become wisdom within you. You no longer need to be stopped externally, because you are governed internally. This is the highest form of alignment. From this point forward, heaven's guidance will feel lighter, not because the assignment is smaller, but because you are stronger. You will recognize direction quickly. You will sense correction gently. You will recover from mistakes without shame. This is spiritual maturity. You are stepping into a season where fruit will speak louder than effort, where consistency will outweigh intensity, where obedience will feel natural instead of forced. That is the reward of honoring correction. Do not look back with regret. Look back with gratitude. What felt uncomfortable was actually merciful. What felt confusing was actually precise. What felt restrictive was actually protective. Heaven does not interrupt lives casually. When heaven responds, it is because destiny is involved. And now, destiny is unfolding without resistance. If your spirit bears witness to this completion, respond in faith. Type "I receive heaven's seal" in the comments if this message has aligned your heart. Blessing code 9041 is now activated over your life. As this word reaches its completion, it is also reaching others who are still confused about divine pauses, unseen boundaries, and heaven's quiet interventions. When you support this mission through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal, the link placed in the description, you are not giving money, you are releasing light. I hear the Spirit declaring, those who sow into this word will never miss divine timing again. This is a prophetic act, not a transaction. Your obedience in this moment becomes a voice for someone else who needs clarity and hope. I speak blessing over every giver, that heaven will guard your steps, accelerate your alignment, and reward your seed openly. Do it now, with confidence, and let your support become part of heaven's response in the earth.